Good evening, friends. Welcome to the YouTube channel GMAT Titans. In the last lecture, we had learned about one of the most important components of critical reasoning, namely the assumptions and how to identify them. Today in this lecture, we are going to solve critical reasoning questions and see how we can figure out assumptions in an actual exam setting. So let's have a look at the first question. So this question says, after examining the bodies of a dozen beached whales and finding evidence of bleeding around the animals' eyes and brains as well as lesions on their kidneys and livers, environmental groups fear that the Navy's use of sonar is causing serious harm to marine animals. A leading marine biologist reports that sonar induces whales to panic and surface too quickly, which causes nitrogen bubbles to form in their blood. The argument above relies on which of the following assumptions? So let's first deconstruct this argument. Let's figure out what is the conclusion of the argument. So obviously here we can see that the conclusion of the argument is the Navy's use of sonar is causing serious harm to marine animals. And on what basis they have reached the conclusion? The author has reached this conclusion. The basis is a leading marine biologist reports that sonar induces whales to panic and surface too quickly, which causes nitrogen bubbles to form in their blood. So we have recognized the premise and the conclusion. We have identified the premise and the conclusion. So now let's see how to figure out the assumption. So first option says marine biologists have documented that other marine animals including dolphins and sea turtles have exhibited kidney and liver lesions. So just because marine biologists have documented that other marine animals also have exhibited kidney and liver lesions, does that actually point out to sonar being the culprit? Obviously no. So we have to eliminate this option. Option B says no studies have been conducted on the possible detrimental effects of sonar on marine animals. So again, if no studies have been conducted on the detrimental effects of sonar and on marine animals, then how can you definitely say that Navy's use of sonar is causing serious harm to marine animals? So B option is also eliminated. C says whales in captivity panic only when exposed to man-made rather than natural sound waves. So first of all, the argument is not about whales in captivity. Captivity means they are talking about whales that are captive in aquariums. But here the argument is about the feral waves or the waves which live in the open sea. So again, this option becomes irrelevant to the argument. And also other fact is that the man-made sound can be any other sound wave, right? It can be like created by the ship's propeller, or maybe some plane is going on overhead. So it necessarily doesn't point out to sonar as being the culprit. So C is also eliminated. Now D says the presence of nitrogen bubbles in the blood has been demonstrated to cause damage to various internal organs. Now this can be the correct answer because the premise is talking about nitrogen bubbles forming in the blood, okay, and this option is connecting the premise to the conclusion. So D is the correct answer. So let's move on to the next option. It is unlikely that the symptoms found in the beached whales could be caused by any known disease. So if it is unlikely that the symptoms found in beached whales could be caused by any known disease, does it necessarily point out to sonar being the culprit? Again, no. So E is eliminated. So let's see how this option D connects the premise to the conclusion. So if we read like this, A leading marine biologist reports that sonar induces whales to panic and surface too quickly, which causes the nitrogen bubbles to form in their blood. The presence of nitrogen bubbles in the blood has been demonstrated to cause damage to various internal organs. Therefore, the Navy's use of sonar is causing serious harm to marine animals. So that makes perfect sense. So D is the correct answer. So let's look at the alternative method. So let's apply the 4-step basic approach. Read the question carefully. This is an assumption question. We know this because it asks you to determine what the argument relies on. Analyze the argument. Be sure to precisely identify the conclusion and premise. You could come up with the following conclusion. The Navy's use of sonar is causing serious harm to marine animals. Why? Premise: surfacing too quickly causes nitrogen bubbles to form in the whale's blood. Next, we need to locate the assumption. Remember to use the question we introduced earlier. Here it would be phrased as follows. Just because the whales have nitrogen bubbles in their blood, does it really mean that sonar is causing them serious harm? Know what the answer needs to do. Assumptions: connect the premise to the conclusion. So you want an answer that has something from both the premise and conclusion in it. Use process of elimination. Check out the gray box for some POE tips on assumption questions. So explanation says, now returning to the answer choices, let's see which one is best. Choice A is wrong. This choice doesn't connect the premise to the conclusion, even though it states that other animals have exhibited similar symptoms. We need the answer choice to connect the symptoms in whales to the use of sonar. Choice B is wrong as well because it brings in information that isn't part of the original argument, as it is irrelevant whether or not the Navy has conducted studies on the harmful effects of sonar. Choice C doesn't help much either. The argument is not concerned with the situations under which whales panic. Choice D looks pretty good. It connects the nitrogen bubbles found in the premise to the serious harm mentioned in the conclusion. So hold on to this choice. Remember that you always need to check all 5 answer choices. However, E is no good. Like B, this choice brings in information that isn't relevant to the argument. The fact that the symptoms are unlikely to be caused by any known disease does not make the link between the sonar and the harm to the animals. Thus, D is the answer. So now let's move on to the next question. Over the past 6 years, most of the students in Tupac City have regularly attended colleges in the neighboring Mekong City to pursue their graduate degrees. However, according to a recent change in the education policies of Mekong City, the colleges in Mekong City are expected to increase their fees to almost the same level as those charged by colleges in Tupac City. Therefore, it can be safely concluded that colleges in Tupac City will see a surge in the number of students enrolling with them to pursue their graduate degrees. So here the conclusion is, it can be safely concluded that colleges in Tupac City will see a surge in the number of students enrolling with them to pursue their graduate degrees. And the premise is that the colleges in Mekong City are expected to increase their fees to almost the same level as those charged by colleges in Tupac City. So here the argument is making a causal relationship between the increase in fees in the colleges of the Mekong City and the increase in enrollment or the surge in number of students enrolling with Tupac City colleges. So the question stem is asking, which of the following is an assumption on which the argument depends? So obviously we need to select an option which actually makes that link. Okay, so which makes that link between the premise and the conclusion obvious. So if we look at the option A, it says the teachers at colleges in Mekong City are generally considered better than those at colleges in Tupac City. So it is talking about the teachers. Okay, so if teachers in Mekong City are better than those in the colleges of Tupac City, then the increase in fees in the colleges of Mekong City will have no effect on the enrollment of students in the Tupac City. So A is eliminated. Tupac City does not have good colleges. Okay. So if Tupac City does not have any good colleges, then obviously they will go to Mekong City. So it is weakening the argument. So we have to. So this cannot be the assumption, because assumption is a essential part of an argument. C says the low fees charged by colleges at Mekong City is the primary reason why students from Tupac City move to these colleges. Yes, so this looks like the correct answer, because it is making the link between the causal link between the increase in fees in the colleges of Mekong City to the surge in enrollment in Tupac City. So C is the obvious answer here. So C is the correct answer. D says students who study at colleges in Tupac City do not perform better than those who study at colleges in Mekong City. So performance of the students is irrelevant to the argument, because argument is mainly mentioning about the increase in fees in the colleges in Mekong City and the consequent surge in the number of students enrolling in the colleges in Tupac City. So D is irrelevant, D is eliminated. And E says Mekong City does not have more colleges than Tupac City. Again, the number of colleges is irrelevant to the argument. It is out of the scope of the argument. So E is also eliminated. So obviously the correct answer is C. So let's read the explanation. So it says, always start an assumption question by paraphrasing the conclusion and the evidence. Conclusion: there will be a surge in the enrollments at colleges in Tupac City. Premise: students in Tupac City who earlier used to move to Mekong City to pursue their graduate degrees will now not do so, as the colleges in Mekong City will charge them the same fees as the colleges in Tupac City do. Note that the conclusion is an opinion of the author, but the evidence is a fact. The colleges in Mekong City are definitely looking at increasing their fees. So the importance of predicting the assumption. So like I already did in the argument, I actually said that there was a causal relationship between, the argument is showing a causal relationship between the increase in fees in the colleges in Mekong City and surge in number of students in the colleges in Tupac City. So all I needed to do was, so I know that now the assumption needs to show that, make that link pretty obvious. So that's how I read the answer. So now let's read this explanation as well. On assumption questions, it always helps if you already have a rough answer in mind before you look at the assumptions, as this can prevent you from getting confused between or among very close choices. For example, given the above conclusion and evidence, in order to arrive at the conclusion from the given evidence, what must the author of the argument be assuming? The author must be assuming that the low fees charged by colleges in Mekong City is the single most important factor why students from Tupac City have been moving to colleges in Mekong City. If we don't assume this, the argument will fall apart. For example, if students have been shifting to Mekong City because the teachers in Mekong City are better than those at Tupac City, then even if the fees at the colleges in Mekong City goes up, students will keep on moving to Mekong City, because the reason for the shift is the better quality of teachers. So for the author's conclusion to be true, he has to assume that the only reason students have been shifting to colleges in Mekong City is the low fees charged by the colleges in Mekong City. Option C states this best and hence is the correct answer. However, just to get more clarity, let's take a look at the other options as well. This fact actually weakens the argument, because in the case the students will keep on shifting to colleges in Mekong City. Option B, quality of colleges, is outside the scope of the argument, because the argument is only concerned with the fees charged by the colleges. In fact, just like option A, B could also weaken the argument, by suggesting that lower fees is not the reason why students have been moving to colleges in Beacon City. C is the correct answer. D says this. Option D. This may or may not be the case, but doesn't have to be the case for the author's conclusion to be true. Option E. The number of colleges in each city is of no consequence to the argument. So guys, that's all for today. And if you have any doubts, please mention in the comment section, and please like and subscribe the channel. Thank you. Goodbye.